Every single man on a mission to fulfill his purpose will at one point or another come face to face with obstacles, challenges, or barriers. It's not an if, it's not a maybe, it is a 100% guaranteed when. And when those obstacles come into play, what separates those that succeed from those who stall out isn't their talent, it's not their money, it's not even their intelligence, it's their grit. It's their ability to persevere and push through whatever obstacle is in their way. Today, we're going to take a look at three specific obstacles that you and I face when we are fulfilling and accomplishing our God given purpose. And we're also going to talk about how we can overcome those obstacles and overcome any barrier that stands between us and our purpose this week on the To Be Man podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the To Be Man podcast, where we come together as men to challenge one another, to encourage one another, to hold each other accountable, and to help each other become better husbands, better brothers, better fathers, better men. If it's your first time with us, welcome to the tribe. I'm glad that you're here. I hope you find something of benefit in this episode and in all the other episodes that have come before. If it is your first time with us, I want to encourage you to do two things. Number one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and get connected to what we're doing here at the To Be Men podcast community. And number two, go and check out the two previous episodes because they're going to tie directly into what we're talking about today. If you've been around for the last couple of weeks, you know that we've been focusing our attention on purpose, right? Focusing on living a life of and for a purpose and trying to figure out what does that mean and what does that look like in today's day and age as a man, right? On the first week, we talked about discovering your unique purpose. We talked about what it means to realize that purpose, to understand it, and to find it. And we found out first and foremost that our purpose is God-given, not self-defined. It's not something we can assign to ourselves. It's not something that we can just pick and choose. It's something that is set upon us and a calling that is placed in our lives. We also took a look at the fact that purpose aligns with our gifts and with our skills, right? If we know what to do and how to do it and we want to do it, chances are those things will intertwine in finding our purpose. Lastly, we also took a look at purpose requires action and not perfection. Too many of us are stuck in paralysis analysis when we just need to go ahead and take the step forward and move towards our purpose. Then the following week, we talked about setting purpose-driven goals, right? Once you found your purpose, once you know what that is, then it should intertwine with everything else you do in your life, starting with your goals for the future. So we talked about what the importance is in setting specific goals, right? We worked off of the SMART platform: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals that go and revolve around your purpose. Then we also looked at what it means to create systems to track the progress of those goals so that you're not setting a goal at the beginning of the year, beginning of the quarter, whenever that is, and then not thinking about it until the end. No, we want to make sure that you have systems in place to help you track weekly, monthly, quarterly progress on those goals. Lastly, we talked about beginning with the end in mind. You want to know where you're going and what you want to do before you get started. That way, you know what steps you have to take and how to arrive at your destination. Some of that includes adapting and adjusting to your goals so that they fit your season of life, your current financial place, whatever the case may be, adjusting and adapting to your life, not the other way around. And so this week, we're wrapping up our purpose driven series with talking about one of the most important things when it comes to purpose, right? We've talked about how to define your purpose and how to find it. We've talked about how to set goals around your purpose. And now we're talking about how to overcome obstacles to your purpose, right? Because let's be honest, anytime we're doing something with purpose and on purpose and for a purpose, we're going to face obstacles, right? There's no if, ands, or buts about it. It's going to happen. I mean, it's happened to us even in our day-to-day life, right? You know, things are going great and out of nowhere, you get a flat tire or your engine blows up or there's a leak in the roof or whatever the case is. Something happens that now has diverted your plan, has changed what you were planning on doing, and now you have to adjust and adapt and overcome. Sometimes those challenges are much harder than a flat tire or a leaky roof. Sometimes it's a debt. Sometimes it's getting fired from your job. Sometimes it's discouragement and depression in your heart and in your mind. Whatever the obstacle may be, today I want us to take a look at three specific things that we can do to overcome three specific obstacles. Y'all ready? Let's dive in. Number one, the first obstacle that we face when trying to pursue and accomplish our purpose is fear. Fear is an obstacle that challenges each and every single one of us, and yet that is so different for each and every single one of us. Some of you are probably scared of heights or spiders or clowns. I'm scared of clowns for some reason. I don't know, but I am. Jumping out of planes, those are fears that make sense. These are all external fears that all of us face. But the greatest obstacle to pursuing your purpose is an internal fear. Not so much a fear of what's going to happen, but a fear of what's on the inside, right? That voice in your head that says, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I don't know what I'm doing? What if I messed up? What if I don't make the difference? What if? Fear is one of the greatest enemies to pursuing our purpose because fear will stop us before we even get started. Once you get rolling, once you get going, it's easier to keep going. It's easier to get that momentum and to just keep pushing forward. But when you're paralyzed in fear, you don't take the first step. Right? We talked about this last week that your purpose requires action, not perfection, but sometimes that action is impossible to take. I've heard the analogy in the story of guys jumping out of planes, where it's paratroopers, air assault, whatever the case may be. And that some of those guys will pause at the door before jumping out. And for them, it's been like 2 seconds, when in reality, it's been 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And now they're non jumpers and they're pulled back and they have to go back and requalify. Why? Because they paused, because they were afraid of something that makes sense to be afraid of. And yet they weren't willing to take that step. Is that you and I? Are we so afraid of what could happen, of the what if, that we're just not willing to take that first step towards our purpose? Man, I love this quote by John Wayne, the man's man, right? He says, "Courage is being scared to death but saddling up anyways." Man, what a cowboy, right? I'm scared to death, but I'm saddling up anyways. I'm doing this anyways. I'm taking this step, and oh well, who cares? I'm scared. Who cares if I'm afraid? I'm taking action. And look, I'm not saying fear isn't real. I'm not saying I'm not going to minimize it or anything. But at the end of the day, what if, right? Instead of thinking, what if I fail? We start thinking, what if I succeed? What if I'm not right enough? What if I am right? What if I can't make it? What if I do make it? Right? Changing our thought process around fear will make all the difference when trying to fulfill our purpose. But what are some actual steps that you and I can take, right? Well, number one, the first thing we can do when trying to face and overcome our fear is name your fear. Name your fear. What is it exactly that you're scared about, right? Not the hypotheticals, not the perhaps or the maybes or the what ifs. What is it exactly that you're scared about? Right? Maybe you're trying to start a business and you're saying, hey, I want to do this thing. I want to launch out on my own, but I'm really dependent on my 9 to 5. And I'm scared that if I do this, I'll lose my job and my steady paycheck. That's a fear. Write that down. Write it down. Say fear of lost income. Or maybe you're saying, hey, I want to go back to school, but I'm scared that I'm so far behind and I'm just going to be the old guy in class and I'm going to waste my time. Write it down. Fear of wasted time, fear of being the old guy. Or maybe it's I'm scared that I'm gonna look like a fool, right? That's one of my fears, right? I'm scared like I'm an imposter. I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about. Write it down. Imposter syndrome. Whatever it is that your fear is, write it down, give it a name, and be specific. Number one, you have to name your fear. And number two, you have to neutralize your fear. Neutralize your fear. Ask yourself, really, what's the worst that could happen? Chances are we have this grandiose idea of the consequences of our failure, but in reality, it's not that bad. The worst that could happen is not that bad, right? There's certain things that yeah will change our life, and yes, we'd have to adjust to. But at the end of the day, what's the quote? But did you die? Right? If we're making through it and we're coming out on the other end alive, then the consequences aren't really that bad. It's never as bad as we think. And when we get that in our minds, it's so much easier to move forward without fear or in spite of our fear. Number one, name your fear. Number two, neutralize your fear. And number three, navigate through the fear, right? That's what John Wayne was talking about. Doing the thing scared, anyways. Navigating and walking through the fear, right? Again, sometimes you're just going to be afraid. You're just going to have this fear and it's not going to go away. You can name it, you can neutralize it, you can give yourself all the reasons why it's not that big of a deal. And yet it's still going to be inside you. At that point, the only way to face that fear is to navigate through that fear. Do it scared, do it afraid, and just do it. Again, we talked about purpose requires action, not perfection. Perfection says, I'm afraid this isn't perfect, this isn't right, this isn't in the right place, it's not the right time, I don't have the right resources. Action says, I'm doing it. I have some of it figured out. I don't have the whole thing figured out. I'm taking the step and I'm moving forward. Fear will always be there, but you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to let it dictate your actions, your purpose, your decisions. The moment you step through your fear is the next step closer to your calling, closer to your purpose. So the first obstacle that we face when trying to pursue and fulfill our purpose is fear. Number two, the second obstacle we face is pressure. Every single man trying to fulfill his purpose will face pressure, whether it's financial pressure, leadership pressure, relationship pressure. We're all going to face pressure at one point or another. And look, I get it, right? There's the pressure of expectations from your boss, from your spouse, from your kids, from your community. There's the pressure of who you're supposed to be in this society, the pressure of being a good man, the pressure of trying to live up to somebody else's standards, the pressure of this and that. I understand that. But let me tell you something, pressure doesn't destroy you, pressure reveals you. Let me say that one more time because it's so important for us to grasp that pressure doesn't destroy you, pressure reveals you. See, what pressure does is it breaks away the falseness. Pressure just compresses until what's brittle, what's fake, what's temporary breaks away, and all that's left is your true nature. When it's all gone, when the fake joy, when the fake confidence, when all of that is just removed, what's left over? What's left over but your values, your morals, and who you are as a man? Man, I love that. And I know it's hard to hear for some of us because they say, well, I don't know if I have strong morals or strong values, and I don't know who I am underneath my money, underneath my success, underneath my education, behind all of this. I don't know who I am. This is why it's so important for us to learn to be men and to help each other grow and become better because we all face pressure. And I want you at the end of it all to be standing bright and shining through like gold does, like a diamond does, under pressure, being revealed and being reformed and refined. Look, if you can handle the pressure right, if you can sustain it, it will bring out the kind of man that can carry a mission with strength and endurance. I love the quote from Winston Churchill who says, you can measure a man's character by the choices he makes under pressure. Pressure doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. So what do we do, right? Okay, that's I know that. I know that I have to build up my internal fortitude. I know I have to learn perseverance. I know that I have to have strong values. But what does that actually mean? What action steps can I take to deal with and overcome pressure? Well, number one, you need to reframe the pressure. Reframe the pressure. Instead of seeing it as something bad, something to escape, something to run away from, see it as a weight that builds your strength, right? When you feel the pressure and the weight of the world on your shoulders, drop into a squat and lift it right back up, right? I, I love that. When you're in the gym, you start off with, just the bar, then you add, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 25, 45, double plates. And every time you add that weight, there's more and more pressure, but there's more and more growth and more strength. See what pressure also reveals, but it also strengthens. When we learn to push through and lift that pressure, we become stronger so that the next time we face the obstacle, we're not crushed. Instead, again, we're revealed. So, number one, you have to reframe the pressure. And number two, you have to resist, retreat. Resist, retreat. When it gets hard, don't pull back. I know that's our urge, right? Things are getting hard. It's not for me. I hate that sometimes we think if it's not easy, then it's not for me. That's not always the case. Some people are talented and gifted and everything is easy to them. But for most of us, things aren't naturally easy and we have to try, try, try. That's what we have to do when we face pressure. Resist, retreat, resist the urge that says, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to face this. I don't want to endure this. And instead, push through. I've heard this story about cows and buffaloes out in the Midwest. And I don't know a darn thing about cows or buffaloes, but the story moves me every single time I hear it. Right? You hear about cows in Oklahoma when there's a great storm coming their way. What do? They retreat, they run for cover. They go and find a barn. They go and find some trees. They go and hide and wait out the storm. But buffalo, Buffaloes see and sense that same storm. And what they do is they come together. The herd gathers up, puts their head down, and pushes through the storm. Man, let's not be cows. Let's be buffaloes, right? Because the buffalo understand what the cows don't understand, that the storm is coming either way. The storm is going to come through and they're going to be in it one way or another. They can sit back in it and endure the entire thing in misery, in fear, hiding under something, or they can put their head down, push through, and make it out on the other side faster sometimes than if they would have just stood still. And they understand that you have to do it together in community, holding each other accountable and being strong together. Man, I love that. I need to change this out for a buffalo now instead of a wolf. That's great. So, anyways, number one, reframe your pressure, resist retreat. And number three, refine your process. Refine your process, right? Strengthen yourself before the pressure comes, before the struggle and the trial comes. Train hard, pray hard, build habits that prepare you for the wait, right? We talked about in the first point fear, right? If one of your fears is, hey, I want to start a business and I'm scared to lose my steady paycheck from my 95 from my 9 to 5. Well, refining the process means, okay, I know that I might lose some money when I go into this. I know that I'm going to feel some financial pressure down the way because I want to step out and do this. So what I'm going to do is start saving more, start spending less. I'm setting more money aside so that when I decide to take this step, I've got a good, nest egg to rely on to cover me while I fulfill this purpose. Right? If you're like, I want to build my relationship, I want a stronger marriage. And I know that in any marriage and any relationship, there's going to be some communication issues and some struggles in trying to figure out, what are we doing as a couple. So beforehand, I'm going to read some books on communication. I'm going to talk to some married men in my life that can give me some advice and some wisdom. I'm going to refine the process and strengthen myself before the pressure comes. Guys, this is so important for us to, again, build up and push through the pressure. Pressure is a proving ground, not a prison. And one more time, pressure doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. We've taken a look at two great obstacles that we'll face on our way to fulfilling our purpose: fear and pressure. But now I want to take a look at probably the greatest challenge and obstacle that you and I face when pursuing our purpose, and that is distractions. Distractions are all around us, whether it's our phone, quite frankly, our friends, our hobbies. There's things that seem to be good, and yet they distract and detract from fulfilling our purpose. Look, somebody once said that a man doesn't lose his purpose overnight. Instead, it happens one small compromise at a time, one small decision at a time, one small mistake at a time. Just like a ship doesn't veer its course immediately, just change a few degrees little by little until next thing you know, it's completely off course. So too, you and I can get thrown off completely off course by small distractions. And you guys see them all the time, whether it's doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or watching pointless videos on YouTube day after day after day. That's a distraction of mine that I'm trying to overcome. I could sit there and watch Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson and all of these great guys on YouTube and not actually do anything with it. And I've just consumed 3, 4 hours of content with no action. Right. So I don't get it wrong. There's things that are out there that are good, that will feed you and that will help you become better. But if you're not actually putting them into play, it's just a distraction. That was one of my challenges with my 50 book challenge last year, right? I was like, I'm going to read all these books and I'm going to get to 50 books. And halfway through, I realized, hey, I've read 25 books in half a year, which is more than I've ever read. But I only remember about 5 of those books. And out of those 5, I've only applied about 2. And I realized that I had now spent about an hour a day for the last, you know, whatever 356 divided by 2 is, days, distracted, doing something that was good, doing something that was beneficial, but doing it in the wrong mindset or at the wrong time or without the right resources. And now I ended up distracted and further away from the goal I was actually trying to accomplish, which was edifying myself, not so much consuming more books. That's great. But I wanted to actually edify and build myself up. Same thing with you guys. Whatever it is that's distracting you, it's keeping you from your purpose. I heard a pastor friend of mine once say this: the enemy doesn't have to destroy you, he just asks to distract you. Man, how big is that? How just mind-boggling is that we're all here thinking that, hey, our enemy's trying to attack and destroy and get us away from God and get us away from our purpose and just ruin our lives. When in reality, all he has to do is distract us, and we'll do this destruction ourselves. If we're distracted enough, we'll do the destroying ourselves, whether it's a vice, whether it's a bad decision, whether it's a lack of integrity, just a small compromise at a time, and we'll end up destroying ourselves before our enemy ever has to. Look at this. Proverbs 29, verse 18 says, where there is no vision, people perish. We need to have clear, focused vision so we can avoid distractions and keep our eyes set on our purpose. I love whenever I see those horses with the horse blinders and they're like, boom, I'm right here. I can't look any other way. My focus is solely on where I'm going. That should be you and me with just visors away from the distractions and our minds and our sight and our vision set solely on our purpose. So, what does that look like, right? What are the action steps that you and I can take towards that? Number one, identify your distractions. So for some of y'all, that's easy. I said distractions, and TikTok came immediately to mind. Instagram, whatever, social media, that's a huge distraction for all of us. We should all be auditing our time on social media. But perhaps it's something else. Perhaps it's doom scrolling your email. Gosh, I've gone through 20 emails. Just I have to respond to that. I forgot about that. Oh, there's a coupon. Oh, there's an event I'd like to go. The next thing you know, it's been an hour and I haven't responded to a single email. Audit your time. Find what's taking your focus away. Find what's pulling your focus away from what truly matters. Man, I love that the iPhones now have the screen time where you can see and track and set limits. When I first saw that, I'll be honest with you, I think I was at 6, 7 hours a day, which is crazy. 6, 7 hours a day on my stupid phone. Like that is ridiculous. I don't think I spend that much time on anything else. And so I was like, that's enough. I gotta cut it. I gotta set it at 4 hours minimum because I gotta use it for work and things like that. But I'm like, Instagram, you get 30 minutes a day. YouTube, you get, I like to listen to podcasts on YouTube. So I'm like, you get an hour a day, and that's it. Like the limits. And at first, I was, remind me in 15 minutes, remind me in 15 minutes, remind me in 15 minutes. But slowly I started getting better at, okay, my time matters. I'm not going to be distracted. My purpose is important. And so I have to stick to this. So, number one, identify your distractions. Number two, implement discipline. This is what I was just talking about, right? Setting those measures, setting those metrics, those boundaries, and sticking to them. Set non negotiable routines that protect your purpose. Say in the morning, I'm not touching my phone. In the evening, my whatever the distraction is, I'm not sitting it. Watch. I keep saying phone because that was a distraction for me. And I'm going to tell you guys what I do now. I'm currently in my office, which is where I do my podcast and a lot of home from work, things like that. In the evenings when I go to bed, 9 times out of 10, not all the time, I'm still working on it, but 9 times out of 10, I like to leave my phone here charging overnight so I don't have it. I don't have it when I'm going to bed. I don't have it first thing in the morning. That way I can pray in the morning before I even touch my phone. I can spend some time talking to my wife instead of scrolling on the phone because that was a distraction for me. And again, I'm not perfect. I'm still struggling. There's still nights when we're just sitting there and we're sending each other reels because that's that's one way to communicate in marriage. But whatever the case is, we have to learn to implement discipline and set those boundaries to those distractions. Number one, identify distractions. Number two, implement discipline. And number three, intensify your focus. Intensify your focus. Guard your mind and your time like your life depends on it. Because if we're honest, it does. Just like your purpose depends on it, your life depends on it. Guard your time, guard your heart, guard your mind. When we can do these things, we can overcome distractions, and the enemy can try and try and try, but he will not distract us. He will not defeat us, and we will accomplish the purpose God has set for our lives. Fear, pressure, distractions. These are the three biggest roadblocks that are standing between you and your purpose. But now, hopefully, you have the tools and you are equipped and ready to go and overcome every single one of them. Guys, let's recap real quick, right? Fear will try to stop you, but we have to be willing to just step out and courage, even when we're afraid and in spite of our fear. Pressure will try to break us, but we have to remember that it is in times of pressure and hardship where we are formed and molded and the true man shines. And lastly, distractions will try to pull you away, but we must remember that our enemy doesn't have to destroy us if he can just distract us and use that to fuel our discipline. Guys, that's the episode. I hope you found it useful and productive. and instructive. I know I had a great time putting it together, and I've learned a lot to apply in my own life as well. Before we wrap up, I want to challenge you guys to just take action on today's episode, right? Don't just consume it and be like, oh, that was great, and move on. No, let's take action and let's make things happen, right? Look at the challenges we talked about and pick one. Which one are you challenged with right now? Which one are you facing right now? Zone in on it, focus in on it, and say, okay, I'm scared. I'm taking action anyways. I feel the pressure. I'm pushing through it. I feel distracted. I'm building the discipline to overcome that distraction. It's been awesome, guys. Again, if you like the content, please make sure to subscribe and share with your friends, share with those that you think would benefit from the content. And listen, if this was the first episode you watch, I recommend you go back and listen to the last two, which will tie into this series on purpose. Also, make sure you guys are connecting with me over on Instagram at 2BMen Podcast. That's where I respond to messages and just chat with somebody. And if you're facing an obstacle right now, you're facing a challenge, you're like, hey, I want to talk about it some more. I want to connect with somebody. Hit me up. I'd love to talk with you and help you grow and become better as we do this together. Men, remember, your mission is too important. Your calling is too high. Your purpose is too precious to let fear, pressure, or distractions take you out. So let's zone in, let's focus, let's lock in, as the kids say, and let's do it again next week. See you guys.